Welcome to Bad at Goodbyes. Each week on our show, we spotlight species from the IUCN Critically Endangered Red List. These are plants and animals with decreasing populations, near the edge of extinction. We'll share species research information and conservation proposals, and then we'll spend a chunk of the show opening a space for contemplation and awe. We'll perform a kind of meditative soundscape of gentleness, quietude, reflection, and maybe mourning. There's a very low likelihood that any of these species will survive the 21st century. And so perhaps we might acknowledge their passage with a moment of our attention, a recognition of our kinship, and with a commitment to personal and systemic change. Thank you for listening. On today's show, we consider the Palma Stick Grasshopper. The Palma Stick Grasshopper is a critically endangered insect native to the Canary Islands off of the northwest coast of Africa. Palma Stick Grasshopper are among the largest in the world, with males as big as 3.5 inches long and females reaching lengths up to 5 inches long. Their cylindrical bodies resemble twigs or sticks, which lends them their common name. Their coloration is a mottled blend of brown, gray, and green, which also camouflages them in the vegetation of their habitat. It's pretty uncanny. I encourage listeners to look up images of the Palma Stick Grasshopper. The camouflage is really effective. Their body is encased in a strong exoskeleton. So this is a kind of segmented protective armor. And the exoskeleton is covered in sensitive hairs for detecting sound vibrations and air currents, alerting the grasshopper to the rustle of leaves by a predator or the calls of other insects nearby. Their body is divided into 3 main sections: the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. The head is relatively small and round, seamlessly blending into the thorax. A pair of compound eyes protrude from the upper sides of its head, allowing for nearly 360-degree vision. Between the eyes, a pair of very long, spire-like antennae are covered in thousands of tiny sensory receptors to detect chemical cues in the air, like the pheromones released by potential mates, or for identifying suitable food sources, and for detecting predators. At the bottom front of the head is the grasshopper's mouthparts, which to my layperson's eyes look kind of like a pair of lips, and pretty kissable lips at that. But there's A lot more going on here than just like looking cute. The Palma Stick Grasshopper mouth has 4 main parts: the mandibles, the maxillae, the labrum, and the labium. So the mandibles are paired, strong, sharp, kind of scissor-like structures, one on each side of the mouth. Each mandible is attached to the head by a multi-flex joint, allowing for precise manipulation of food and for opening and closing horizontally, which is unlike our jaws, which open and close vertically. The inner edges of the mandibles have sharp incisors for cutting and tearing the shoots and leaves that the herbivorous grasshopper eats. And then there's a molar region a little bit further back that has a ridged surface for crushing and grinding the plant material. The maxillae are paired structures located behind the mandibles that aid in holding and tearing food and guiding food toward the mouth. The maxillae pulps are like these mini antennae that are equipped with taste receptors, and so the maxillae work in tandem with the mandibles. The mandibles perform the kind of primary cutting and grinding. The maxillae hold the food steady and taste it for flavor and viability. And then the labrum and labium can be thought of as the top and bottom of the grasshopper's mouth. They both help guide food into the mouth, and the labium can close upward, preventing food from falling out when chewing. The Palma Stick Grasshopper is a very specialized feeder, consuming only 3 total species of plants. So less than a quarter of its diet is split between the Canary Island pine and the Canary Island broom. And then the remaining 3+ quarters consists of the new shoots and tender leaves of the Canary Island spurge. It's worth noting that the Canary Island spurge contains a toxic sap. The Palma Stick Grasshopper has evolved a tolerance to these toxins, allowing it to consume this otherwise unpalatable food source. So it eats poison with its scissor mouth. Don't kiss the grasshopper. So that's the head. Onward onto the thorax, the middle section of the grasshopper's body. All 6 of its legs, 3 on each side, grow from the thorax. The forelegs and midlegs are shortish and thin, and the hind legs are thicker, longer, and more powerful. Those are the jumping legs. Though the Palma Stick's jumping ability is rather limited compared to other grasshoppers due to their large body size. And unlike many other grasshopper species, the Palma Stick do not have wings. So though they can jump short distances, their primary mode of transportation is walking and climbing. Okay, so that was the head and the thorax. Now the abdomen. The abdomen is the widest and longest section of the grasshopper's body and contains the digestive, respiratory, and reproductive systems. In female Palma Stick, the abdomen is notably larger for holding the eggs that they produce and the ovipositor, which is this specialized structure that's used for laying the eggs. Palma Stick grasshopper are sexually dimorphic, meaning there are distinct physical differences between females and males beyond like just their reproductive organs. In this case, it's their size, and so females are generally roughly twice the size of the males. Female Palma Stick grasshopper sing to attract their mates. The grasshopper has a tiny, hard plate connected to the side of its thorax by a flexible membrane. And so when it contracts this section of its thorax, the plate rotates, bumping against a ridge on its underside, creating a clicking sound. When the grasshopper relaxes its thorax, then the plate spins back, creating another click. So then in repetition, it creates a rhythmic mating call to attract males. It sounds like this. So males will follow that song, and if receptive, the female will allow the male to mount her back and initiate copulation. During mating, the male transfers a sperm packet, a spermatophore, to the female's reproductive tract. After mating, the female Palma Stick grasshopper lays her eggs in the soil beneath the Canary Islands spurge. She carefully selects a suitable location near the base of the plant where the eggs will be protected, and the emerging nymphs will have immediate access to their food source, the Canary Island spurge. The eggs are encased in a protective, frothy substance that helps to maintain moisture and safeguard them from predators and environmental fluctuations. Embryonic development within the buried eggs can take up to several months, and then once the nymphs hatch, they emerge from the soil and begin feeding on spurge leaves. As they develop, they undergo a series of molts, shedding their exoskeleton as they grow. It's estimated they undergo around 6 molts before reaching adulthood. And each molt represents a significant step in their development, so allowing them to increase size until they reach maturity and are ready to reproduce themselves. This process takes about 2 years, from nymph to mature reproducing Palma Stick grasshopper. In the dream, grasshopper hides behind the branch. My lover dresses for the day. In the dream. Adult Palma Stick grasshopper have not been observed exhibiting robust social behavior and are generally solitary outside of mating. They're primarily diurnal, meaning they are most active during the daytime. They're ectothermic, or cold-blooded, meaning they rely on external sources of heat, like the sun, to regulate their body temperature. So they spend the warm daylight hours foraging and feeding, and then at night they shelter among the foliage, reducing their exposure to predators and conserving warmth. They are characterized by a kind of shyness and a deliberate slow pace. They rely on their camouflage and subtle movements to avoid detection by predators. And detection by scientific observers. Grasshopper expert and entomologist Heriberto Lopez, who has studied the palma stick extensively, writes, quote, "The species moves very slowly and rotates around the branch on which it stands when it perceives some near activity, interposing the branch between itself and the subject of movement. In this way, it hides from the sight of any stranger. In order to increase the success of detecting specimens, we used 2 observers per plant at the same time, which allows detecting the individuals that moved when hiding from one of the observers." End quote. And so Dr. Lopez's team, the field team, would go in pairs, and one observer would wait quietly near a Canary Island spurge plant, and then the other would make a bunch of noise on the other side. And the quiet observer could then more easily see the grasshopper and do field counts as it turned to hide from the noisy scientist. The Palma Stick Grasshopper is native to the island of La Palma, one of the westernmost islands in the Spanish Canary archipelago, located off the northwestern coast of Africa. The Canary Islands were formed through volcanic activity over millions of years. So the islands are the result of a hot spot. This is like a plume of hot magma that rises deep from within the Earth's mantle, building up layers of lava on the ocean floor and eventually emerging above sea level to create the islands. This process began 70 million years ago, and the island of La Palma began to emerge above the ocean's surface about 2 million years ago. So the island is like this layer of cooled lava upon layer of cooled lava over and over for 68 million years. This impossible paper mache building up from the ocean floor, finally cresting the ocean waves 68 million years later. And then, because we live on our miraculous Earth, life, plant and animal blossom there and evolve really specialized adaptations to this unlikely landscape. The Palma stick is found only in roughly 12 square miles on the southwestern edge of La Palma. This is an arid scrubland biome characterized by sparse vegetation, these volcanic rock formations, and dry, dusty slopes with expanses of lava fields, cinder cones, severe coastline cliffs, and black sand beaches. Plant life is primarily drought-tolerant shrubs and succulents, with scattered patches of grasses and herbs. It's a climate with warm, dry summers and mild, marginally wetter winters. Summer temperatures will reach highs in the 90s, while winter lows rarely dip below 50. The annual rainfall is relatively low, averaging between 12 and 16 inches, with most of that precipitation occurring during the winter months. The Palma Stick Grasshopper shares its island home with the Canary Island white butterfly, laurel pigeon, ladybug, Timalia, wild madder, canary big-eared bat, common kestrel, Canary Island gecko, Canary Island pine, incense plant, blue chaffinch, West Canary lizard, Corey shearwater, Canary Island sorrel, dragonfly, loggerhead sea turtle, honeybee, skink, blue tit, red admiral butterfly, and canary, the bird from which the islands get their name. and of course, the Canary Island spurge, and many, many more. Habitat loss and fragmentation pose the most significant challenges to the grasshopper's survival. Its deep dependence on the Canary Island spurge makes it really vulnerable to changes in the ecosystem. So historically, land clearance for development and agriculture significantly reduced the availability of suitable habitat, which drastically reduced and fragmented the grasshopper population. And then today, continued development, specifically illegal logging in order to expand grazing areas, and then overgrazing by introduced domestic species further threaten the grasshopper scrubland. Introduced invasive plant species also pose a risk of outcompeting the Canary Island spurge, again reducing available food and shelter for the grasshopper. Relatedly, human-induced climate change is altering both temperature and rainfall patterns on the island, which of course impacts both the Palma Stick and the Canary Island spurge that it relies upon. The Palma Stick grasshopper is legally protected. It's included as endangered in both the Spanish national and the Canary regional official lists of threatened species. And most of its population is in protected natural areas. Nevertheless, the Palma Stick grasshopper has been considered critically endangered on the IUCN Red List since 2012, and their population is currently in decline. Our most recent counts estimate that less than 200 Palma Stick grasshopper remain in the wild. Information for today's episode about the Palma Stick grasshopper was gathered from the Bulletin of Entomological Research, Volume 97, Issue 2, Conservation Genetics, Volume 8, Issue 3, the Museo Nacional de Ciencias Naturales of Spain, the American Museum of Natural History, the Journal of Zoology, Volume 275, Issue 1, Group of Entomological Research from Tenerife, Wikipedia, and the IUCN. And the sound recordings were from Heriberto Lopez from the Orthoptera species file online. And so in a moment, I would like to perform some music in hopes of opening a space to be in contemplation of the other lives with whom we share our earth. I want to state explicitly that this music is not for the Palma Stick grasshopper. I don't want to treat the grasshopper as an unconsenting muse that I extract meaning from or put meaning upon. Instead, I want to use this moment to express my very human awe and hold space to consider my own relationship with other life. And so I will sit in the space of sound and awe and contemplation, and I warmly invite you to join me. I honor the life force of the Palma Stick Grasshopper. I will carry its human name in my record. I am so grateful to have shared time on our planet with this being, and I lament the ways in which I and my species have harmed and diminished this species. And so, in the name of the Palma Stick Grasshopper, I pledge to reduce my consumption and my carbon footprint and my wastefulness. I pledge to acknowledge and attempt to address the costs of my actions and inactions. And I pledge to resist the harm of plant and animal kin or their habitats by individuals, corporations, and governments. I pledge my song to the witness and memory of all life, to a broad celebration of biodiversity, and to the total liberation of all beings. This has been Bad at Goodbyes. Thank you for listening. Until next time, let's take care of each other and all of our kin.